As Mrs. Pennington South continued to pour more tea for Cuthbert and herself, her son emitted a very loud and conspicuous sigh of frustration. Her eyes darted ever so briefly in his direction before returning to her guest, a mischievous glint just visible in them. "Well now, isn't this lovely?" she beamed. "This is turning into a truly lovely day, don't you think?" "Oh, yes, it's quite lovely," Tristram agreed. "It's obscene," Cuthbert announced in a surly tone, his gaze still fixed on the plate in front of him. There was a moment of awkward silence as both Tristram and Mrs. Pennington South looked over at Cuthbert in surprise. Suddenly Mrs. Pennington South erupted into peals of high-pitched laughter. "Oh, Cuthbert, you are wicked!" she squealed, quickly turning her attention back to her guest. "You'll have to forgive my son, Tristram. He has a rather robust sense of humour. He gets it from me, of course. His father has all the sense of humour of a boiled potato. But then in his line of work I don't suppose there's much call for a quick wit or an amusing turn of phrase." Tristram nodded vaguely in agreement. "What does your husband, do, Mrs. Pennington South?" She muttered distractedly. "Oh, I don't know. Isn't that odd? Business, I think." "I say, how jolly exciting." Mrs. Pennington South turned eagerly to her son. "Not nearly as exciting as what my Cuthbert does," she said expectantly. "Is it, Cuthbert?" Cuthbert maintained a stony silence. "Well, go on, tell him," she insisted. Cuthbert finally lifted his head and fixed her with a steely gaze. "It's not something I wish to discuss, Mother," he said through gritted teeth. "Oh, honestly, darling, you are hopeless," she said, turning her attention back to Tristram. "Modest to a fault, as you can see, and so shy in front of male company. I'm afraid it's you that's going to have to take the reins in any future relations you may have, Tristram." Cuthbert's glare intensified. "Mother," he cautioned. "I'm sometimes convinced that if he didn't have his mum-ums giving him a little nudge once in a while, he'd simply shrivel up and disappear altogether." "God, if only," he exclaimed, turning away in disgust. "What my shrinking violet of a son is too coy to tell you is that he is, in fact, a fashion model," she proclaimed, stroking the back of his head affectionately. Cuthbert brushed her off irritably. "Mother, I am not a fashion model, and I do wish that you would stop telling people that." But she was unbowed. Of course he studied marine anthropology or something in that vein, but as it turns out, it's the fashion world that's been beating down his door, all desperate to capitalise on his dazzling good looks. She looked across to Tristram with a knowing smile. "And who can blame them? Right, Tristram?" After a deep sigh of frustration, Cuthbert collected himself and turned to Tristram with an air of forbearance. "Since I am now forced to explain myself, I should tell you, "Tristram?" Tristram interjected. "Thank you, yes, Tristram. I should tell you that my fashion career consists of a couple of print ads for a discount clothing chain that appeared in one or two of the local newspapers. I have a friend who works for one of the lesser ad agencies, and it was entirely at his prompting. I only agreed because it seemed like a quick way to make some easy money to pay off a few bills, and I now regret it deeply. What I am is the proud holder of a PhD in Egyptology." After an awkward silence during which his mother and Tristram looked blankly at each other, Cuthbert felt compelled to explain a little further. "It's just that there's not much call for it at the moment." "Never mind, my sweet," his mother said consolingly, as she resumed stroking the back of his head. "And who cares about a silly old PhD when you have the looks of a matinee idol? Don't you think so, Tristram?" Cuthbert shook her off again, his frustration growing. "Mother, will you please stop trying to make Tristram feel like a member of my fan club? And will you please stop talking to me in that way?" "In what way, darling?" she cooed. As if I were developmentally handicapped." His mother blithely turned her attention once again back to her new guest. "Do you work, Tristram?" she inquired. "As a matter of fact, No, wait.